Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm really pleased to have Ara Doak here today to talk about her life. And by way of introduction, you were born and raised in Boston.
I was.
Yeah. And graduated from Wentworth Institute of Technology in 2006 with a Bachelor in Architecture.
That's right.
Yeah. Your first job was at CBT Architects in Boston, where you worked even during college. Mm-hmm. And that was on projects for corporate offices, independent schools, and universities throughout New England.
That's right.
And then you moved to Maine in 2014 with your husband, Nathaneal Doak, who I'm assuming you met at Wentworth College.
We did.
Wentworth
we went
Institute.
Together. Yep.
Yes. And in Maine, you joined a design build office where you brought your Boston experience and expanded your architectural knowledge to include a wide range of custom residential designs and managed some high-end residential projects along the coast of Maine and beyond. And then in 2023, you took the big step and launched your own architectural firm where you, through thoughtful, collaborative, timeless, and grounded design, you bring your skills in renovation, new home building, construction, space planning, and project coordination to your clients. You are the mother to 8-year-old Oliver and 4-year-old Damien. They are two adorable, well-behaved and fun-loving children. I just love when we see you and your kids and the smiles that come from them, and the big wave from Oliver is just what a greeting he is.
They are fun. They are fun.
Yeah. So you grew up in Boston. Tell us about how that influences your architectural work in Maine.
Yeah. I think it actually starts, as a child, and just that drive that your parents instill in you. I come from an immigrant family. My parents are from Guatemala, and I think that really was probably my driving force in getting to where I am now.
So your parents came from Guatemala?
Yeah, they did.
First generation.
They are
immigrants.
first generation. Yeah. So my mom came over, and she came, via visa and a work permit and all that, and she decided to stay. And then my dad came over, and they met, and it's been great. I mean, I think that they've had to work really hard. And they've had to kind of do what they can in order to give somebody a life that, a child a life that they can fulfill and make, make their way through life in the United States. And I think that's really what drove me. And that was always my driving force in life, was seeing them work hard. Seeing them have to work day and night sometimes. It's a lot. But they always kind of said, go, 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 push, 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 get to where you want to be.
Because I think for us who are not from, for some of us anyways, we have it pretty easy. So to have parents who have come here and have to, they're talking about starting from scratch.
Yeah.
They completely started from scratch.
Yeah.
Didn't know, did they have any friends or?
So my aunt, they had my aunt. I mean, I had one aunt who was here, but she came on a work visa also. And so she was here, and she was the way that my mother got here. But they didn't have any family, and they didn't speak the language. It's hard. But they learned. I mean, my mother still doesn't speak perfectly. My dad definitely speaks a lot better. But I think seeing them again, just working really hard at it and knowing that you can get to where you want to be, but just by putting in the work was really what has motivated me in life. And I always see them as that example of, things are hard, but if you just push through it and if you just try your best, then, you'll get to where you want to go. So
did you have challenges throughout high school that you had to face? So what might have some of those been?
Yeah, I think, the balancing of my Latin culture with wanting to be also an American. I was born here, but trying to find that balance, because I think a lot of my classes were all English speakers. And then there was, the Spanish classes with the Spanish kids in them. And I didn't belong there, because I was in the other one. And so trying to be part of both groups was really hard for me. And also when I was about to go into high school, my parents decided that they wanted to move to a different city. And at that point I was like, I can't start over again. What am I going to do? So I partially kind of lived at my aunt's house still so that I could still go to that high school. And when I was living with my parents, I would get on the train, leave really early, and go to school every morning. And I think that was a huge challenge.
How far a distance was that?
I had to get onto 2 trains. So I had to take the blue line, switch over, get on the orange line, and then I would take a bus. So I would have to do that. Yeah.
How many other kids were doing that?
No.
Not many.
Yeah, not many. Yeah. But it had its struggles too, because in terms of like after school, like I was not part of the after school activity club and all of that, only because I had to make the commute home, when I was living with them. And it became a lot, but again, it's like, this is where I want to be. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of courses that I wanted to take, and I knew that was the right direction. And so I decided that was really what I needed to do in order to get there. My senior year, I had taken, a few AP courses prior. And so that kind of set the tone for where I was going to go. I feel like, I was in the voc ed department, and I was taking a drafting course. And at that point, my teacher, I was probably in the class for like 2 weeks, and he said, "I have a job for you." And I said to myself, okay, I have no idea what this is going to entail. But he said, "Let's go, let's hop on the train and go downtown, and I'm going to introduce you to someone, and we'll go from there." And he took me into an engineering office, and he said, "Here, you can start here." And literally it was like, start the next day. And I said, okay.
So was this after school?
It was after school. So I could leave early because
take another train?
Yeah, exactly. So I'd take a bus, and then I would hop on the train, and then I would get off and walk a little bit down to the waterfront in Boston. Beautiful location. And I wasn't going to say, I was like, this is perfect. Like, why wouldn't I do this? So I was able to leave school early because I had those AP courses, and I would go to work. And then from there, I would just take the train back home, right? But it was great. It was, and I think that's in life, you don't realize it, but it's those little things that like people do for you. Like you don't realize where you're going to go. And it's these little moments in life, I feel like, really make a humongous impact.
Yeah, the dots that get connected.
Yeah. And sometimes you're afraid to take them. Yeah. And you're like, is this the right thing? But no, like I already have so much on my plate. Maybe I can't do this.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like that coloring book that you had that was a connect the dots, and the dots are there, but the lines are not drawn. And then, if you could draw them later on, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's it. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, and then I worked there. And then I realized, I think, I was doing engineering as fire protection, plumbing. And that was the department I was working in. And I thought to myself, there's no art here. Like I want art, and I want a little bit more creativity. And then I said, maybe I should try something different. And so then I went back and I told my drafting teacher, I said, I love this, but I think I need to go into architecture, not engineering. And he said, okay, well, let's talk about it.
Let's get on a train. I got another job for you.
And then he was great. He kind of led me in the right direction. He said, well, then you should apply for, an architecture school. And I was scared. I mean, I was like, I'm the first one to kind of go to college again. So it's in my family, and it's just kind of like, what do I do? I don't. Okay. I'm an only child. I have 2 cousins that I'm very, very close with, and they did go to college. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things like, is this I'm kind of doing something that nobody's really done yet. Like, what do I do? And again, he helped me, and he kind of steered me in the right direction. So I applied to Wentworth, and it was the only school I applied to. So it was another big risk. Yeah. I was like, but I knew I wanted to go there. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, all right, well, if it doesn't work out, we'll figure this out. And thankfully they did take me in. Mm-hmm. And I think that again, kind of, one of those other dots, right? Like you were saying, it was like, okay, well, this was an opportunity, get this job in an engineering firm. This is my one dot. I better take it. Better go in that direction. So I got in, and I was a commuter because my parents were in Boston, so I could just, I had free housing in a way. So why wouldn't I take that? And that helped. That was what they could give me. They couldn't give me money for school, but they could give me a place to live. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I took it. It was a lot of hard work for them again. And they would help me in whatever way they could. They would drive me. They would pick up materials for me, so I didn't have to lug it on the train again. And they would do a lot of that stuff. So again, just seeing them even through college, they struggled with me. Like they went through the entire process, and they would see me up all night, and they would come in and check on me like they, at home. So it was a lot, but I think that having them there to kind of, again, instill that hard work ethic was fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. And, sooner or later, I decided, okay, well, now here I am. I should probably kind of switch gears from engineering, right? I was still kind of working there. And I got that introduction to the office down in Boston for architecture, and said, all right, here we go again. Like, all right, let's do this. So switch gears to and then go there and work there during summers. And I mean, that group was fantastic. Like, even moving to Maine was really hard because I always thought to myself, is this the right thing to do? Like, we're dropping everything. Like, this is so scary. But that saying, like, you can either live in fear or live in faith, right? Like,
you choose.
Yeah, you choose what you want.
Exactly right.
And so I just said, all right, let's do this. Let's pack up. Let's move. Let's go.
Because you were with the other architecture firm in Boston for what, 9 years, 8 or 9 years?
About 8 years, yeah. So it was
a
long
lot of
time.
security, a lot of sense of where you were in place.
Yeah. And, we had gone through that recession back in 2008, 2009, right? And that was scary. Because I think even leaving in 2014, I still remembered that. Sure. Like I recalled, we had grown so much, and we had filled hallways with people because we were taking on all this work, and I was scared. I think that probably affected everybody, but I kind of still carried that in the back of my mind. I was like, what am I doing? Like, we made it through that, and here we go. Like, we're just going to drop everything and go, basically.
And yet that hunger feeds us.
Yeah, right?
Just like your parents.
Curiosity.
Your parents, you saw that through them, and then, curiosity.
Yeah. And, it's that drive. I think that they always said, try. You always have to try something. If not, then, if you fail, you can always go back, right? You can always, so I think that was good. Yeah. And that's how we landed here.
Yeah. And in Maine. Yeah. So you're married to Nathaneal, who's from Maine. So you're coming back here, and you're actually living in what was his family's home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was actually the real reason why we were moving to Maine was because he wanted to work with his dad. I mean, he was going to retire, and, he recalled all those years of working with him through high school. And he said, well, all right, let's give this a shot. Let's do this. Let's test it 1 or 2 years. If it doesn't work out, we're out. We're heading back. We're packing up again and moving. But, it was one of those things. It was family, right? And we decided that it was worth a shot. It was worth, just trying to connect. And he had given up so much by living in Boston and staying down there that we thought to ourselves, all right, now it's time to try the other side of it and go back to his family and be there. So,
because really the two of you are sort of your own team. I mean, because when we are in a relationship with somebody, we are a team. And you're an architect, and he is a lighting architect at that time, right?
He was a lighting engineer.
Lighting engineer. Okay. Yeah.
Lighting designer. I don't know.
Lighting designer. Yeah. But sort of in the same spaces to some extent.
Yeah. So he was kind of a consultant for where he was working. He was a consultant for the architects. So a lot of the larger projects would call them in and it wasn't just, the electrical lighting, but also day lighting. So it was a little bit of, I'm not going to describe it correctly. And of course, I think he'll correct me later. Because, it's that idea of like the daylight and using that as much as you can, and then supplementing with artificial lighting. But he loved that job too, right? And I think it was hard for him to also leave that. And thankfully, we still have those connections. I think we keep those friends because it was special. Like you always have to, where you came from, and you appreciate what people did for you and who you worked with and who you met. Yeah.
And so really, family has driven a lot of what you've done.
Yeah.
Your beginnings and your sort of middle.
Yeah, life was, even with our jobs, the hours were long. And it was crazy. And we lived in a tiny little apartment. And sometimes he would work during the day and then at night he would have to go out and continue working because with lighting, you see it at night.
Mm.
So you have to go back out and see if what you did actually works. So then we wouldn't see each other and we would cross paths and, and we were living in a 4-story walk up. It wasn't going to work if we wanted to have a family, right? Yeah. So we wanted to slow down a little bit and we wanted to get closer to his family. And we knew that at some point we were going to want our own family. And that's when we said, all right, life change here. Let's just do this.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you kind of say, let's drop everything, right?
Start again.
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. But picking up from where you were.
Yes.
So then this other transition that you did in January, so starting your own firm, and where did that come from?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think that it came from me not being able to not do what I love to do. I think it came from me realizing that I need a good balance, and this way the only person I can blame is myself if I don't find that balance. Again, it comes back to family and realizing that I don't want to not be there for my kids. But I also know how hard not only I have worked to get me to where I am, but other people have worked hard to get me to where I am. Mm-hmm. And I can't just let go of that, right? I have to keep it going. And I think that was the reason why I said to myself, I love what I do. I can figure this out. I think I know what I'm doing. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Right? Let's take a risk. Nathaneal has always been a, really good support. And he has always said, do it. Like, do what you want to do. Like, we're going to get through this. And even Oliver, it's amazing. He's like, he was actually, part of the, like, Mommy, are you not going to work anymore? And I was like, interesting. I said, why? Why do you ask? And he's like, well, because I see what you do and, I like it and I want to see you draw. And like, sometimes he would come up with these little comments and I would be like, interesting.
What they notice.
Yeah, they do notice. They notice a lot.
Just like you did with your parents. I mean, you saw their work ethic and you saw what they're doing, and it's a seed. Yeah. They're seeds that are planted.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that you're right. I think that what you get from your parents instills a lot of who you become in life.
Mm-hmm. And for those of us that are fortunate, we're going to follow that. And for others who aren't as fortunate, they will see, they will find another way. Yeah. And,
the hope, I think, is that there's always people out there that can help those that need that, right? Because some families I know don't have that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
When you mentioned that, I meant to say something before about this teacher that saw something in you and guided you. I mean, what a blessing that was.
Yeah. I mean, teachers...
but yet that seems to be even above and beyond. Yeah. Perhaps in that particular case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was great. He was really great.
Clearly saw something in you, and I'm sure other students too, a way to help guide them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of teachers do that, right? They're like, that's not their job, really, right?
Gift.
But that's their gift.
It's their gift.
Yeah.
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 The really good teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I jumped you off a little bit. So family really drove a lot of you making this decision to start your own firm.
Yeah, I think it was, that balance, right? That life balance of being there for the kids, but also doing what I want to do. And just making sure that they come first. I want to be there for my clients, and I will be there for my clients. But, I even right now, you work, I drop them off. I get right back to my computer. I work all day. I go pick them up. I'm there until they go to bed. And then I go back to my computer sometimes, and so you keep going, you're not going to just drop everything because of them, but you have more control in terms of like how you do things and when you do things. And they see that, and I think that I hope that that's inspiration for them to work hard in life and realize that you can do what you love.
It's almost a rhythm. Once you establish that rhythm of here's the needs and here's how I can, ebb and flow through this. And once you get that rhythm going, it's so much easier. When you're, I think when you're fighting that rhythm, and you can call it balance too, that's when it becomes so difficult.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes it's when you're fighting because you're letting too much in one area or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And letting one overcome the other, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Yeah.
So working for somebody else, that probably had an impact on what you were dealing with.
I think for me it was, I loved where I was working. I think the people were amazing, and I think I miss everybody. And I still try to keep connections because I do, I want to make sure that they know that I still, appreciate them, but
still love you. Yeah.
Still love you.
Still family. Just.
But I think it's one of those things where, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. No, it wasn't that. I felt like I could maybe not be there fully for them. Like you say, you want to give 110% all the time. Sometimes I felt like I wasn't giving 110%. Like maybe I was only giving 95%. And for me, that wasn't enough. Like I wanted to give more, and I didn't want to hurt anyone or anything by doing that. And I said to myself, yeah, this is not working. I can't give 110 here and 110 here. And, if you're not fully into something, I felt like it was better to kind of walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you have to see that as an opportunity. And not giving up. I don't see it as giving up. I feel like it was just a chance to try something different.
Yeah, it's a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
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 And doing it on your own. So now that you're doing it on your own, whether you want to use the word control or, you're touching everything
Mm-hmm.
in the process now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that, I love setting up that initial meeting with the client and walking through what they want to do with their ideas. And sometimes they're all over the place. And you're like, hold on here. Like, what is it exactly that you want? And sometimes it takes another meeting or another phone call to figure it out. And even then, sometimes they're like, oh, but what if we do this? And you're like, okay, let's talk about it. And then growing that idea and then showing them a couple options and saying, okay, well, these are the things we can possibly do. What do you think? And they're like, oh, no, I really don't like that one. Or no, I really don't like this one. But you have to take that, like it's part of the process. And sometimes they don't like either of them, and then you start over. But sooner or later, you do develop something that comes together from the communication that you have with them. And then building upon that and building, that trust that they are going to live in this someday or use this space someday. I think that's really important.
It's interesting. So architecture, in a lot of ways, it's kind of creating a life story,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, and how they live.
Yeah, you find out a lot about people from that initial meeting, right? You ask a lot of questions and you look around and, you're not trying to be snoopy. I think it's just kind of like you need to understand who you're working with.
Yeah.
And you want to be sensitive to the way that they live, the way that they maybe want to live, and finding, again, that rhythm, right? Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that it works for them.
Mm.
I think that's what architecture is about, is really trying to find a peaceful place for them to be, and, thoughtful design that they're going to enjoy being in.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. How do you, I've always wondered this, how do you blend your architectural elements, your clients maybe knowing what they want to do or maybe not completely, and then you've got what you believe to be the final drawings
Mm-hmm.
that go to the builder, and how does that all integrate together?
How does it all marry?
Yeah, how does it all marry together? It's like it is the big wedding day.
Yeah. It's, I think that you have ideas sometimes as an architect of what things should be. And I think that clients don't see those. And I think that's okay. That's completely fine. You have to know how to try different styles. You have to try to show clients things in different ways. Sometimes it's just a flat drawing. Sometimes you have to do a 3-dimensional drawing. Sometimes you have to do color. Sometimes clients only see in black and white.
Mm.
I think it comes from what they do as a profession and how you relate the idea to them is really important. So that's part one, I think, is really trying to get the ideas on a piece of paper, however way, like whatever way you can, in order to have them understand what it is that you're representing. Once they see that, and once they say, this is really what I like, then you have to get it back down in 2D in a way that the builder can take that and actually draw or build that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think your mind is constantly going from listening to modifying to explaining to, you have to be able to grasp all these different ways of communicating. And then you put it on paper. And then the way I always have thought about it is, if I give this set of drawings to a builder and I'm not there, can they put this together, right? Like, is there a way that they don't have any questions and they can actually build this? And I'm hoping that by the time that those drawings go to the builder, everything that the client wanted is in there. Yeah.
And it's very interesting because, you talk about right side, left side of the brain. And for an architect, you've really got to step into all of it, right? Because you've got to have the artistic piece to create the final sort of feel, I think. And then you've got to have the technical skill to say, this is how these rafters are going to come together. And so that's a big challenge.
It's a challenge, but I think that it goes back to what we were saying before. You rely on other people a lot. Architecture, I feel like, it's not just you and the client sometimes too. So during the design process, you bring in a lot of consultants, right? You need somebody that's an expert at structure. You need an expert at lighting. You need an expert at heating and plumbing. So I think that it's that marriage, like you marry the ideas onto paper, and then but you also, during that process, you're kind of like dating all these different trades, and you have to like figure out how to bring that all together into one set of documents. So it's, it's a lot of trust with other people too, to make sure that client's ideas get transported all the way to what someday they're going to have in the ground. But it's a teamwork, right? It's trust and it's teamwork in order to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. That has always been an interesting concept to me. So your project at 1037 Washington Street, tell us a little bit about that. That's a very, it's one of the most historical homes in Bath.
It's an old home. Yeah. It's 1795.
1795.
Yeah. So we bought that house from the Doak family. And it had been in their family for about 100 years. It hadn't been touched in a really long time.
Really long time.
Really long time. Yeah. And we actually had been looking at houses in Portland. I was afraid to move to Maine, I think, from the city. And I was like, I can't. Bath? Woolwich? Where is that? Like, I can't go all the way up there. And so I was okay with moving to Portland. And we were looking at houses down there. And
Portland probably was just dipping your toe into leaving Boston.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Bath was, oh, shoot.
Yeah. How can we go that far? And that house had been on the market, and we said, okay, maybe we should just do this again, right? Like, sure, let's just go for it. And we actually drew plans before we actually.
Did you?
Yeah. And we were like, how can we make this our own? Like, how can we make it so that it works for us? And thinking still, like, okay, well, maybe someday we want to have a family. Like, how can we make this work? So we kind of had sketches and ideas, and then we said, okay, time to do it. Let's go. Let's tell them it's a deal. And so we moved in, and we had not yet bought the house, and so they kind of leased it to us for a few months. And then when we were ready to go, we signed all the paperwork. Then we said, all right, our hammers were ready, everything was ready to go, all of our tools. And we got right back to work, and we said, all right, this is our idea. Like, let's start outside. So before we even signed the paperwork for the house and it was ours, we started working outside, like in the gardens, and because we didn't want to touch the house. So we were like, what can we do? What can we do? Yeah. And so we kind of just weeded and got things ready. And then afterwards, we started to take down walls and finding a lot of really interesting things. It's been a lot of fun. We found a lot of notes. We found some old shoes, like hats. And it's just been really interesting to see what we found in the walls and the history that house has had. And, another thing that we've tried to do with that house is we've kept something that we found in every room, and we've cleaned it up and restored it, and we've used it somewhere in the house. So like, for example, every single room has something from the house, but used in a different way, or maybe combined with something else in order to make it work. But it's been a long project. I mean, we're still working on it, but it's kind of, again, what we love to do. Nathaniel is part of the building world, and, he has that architecture background, and I have the architecture too. So it's just, we feel like by doing something to our house, we're also kind of testing some of these design aspects that we love, right? So it's been fun.
You're living in your work.
Yeah, we're living in our work.
Extent,
yeah. And it takes forever, but
Well, you do know,
okay.
I'll say this, I probably overuse this, but done is a 4-letter word. In so many ways. Yeah. So tell us about what would you give for advice to somebody who was just getting out of college and going to start? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say don't be scared to try something. Like, it's just one of those things where you get out of college and you have no idea, right? And you might say, you might have thoughts of maybe, oh shoot, maybe that's really not what I wanted to do. Like, when I just went to school for all this, and maybe this isn't what I want. Try it. Like, just give it a shot. If it doesn't work, you can always try something else, right? It's just one of those things sometimes you have to take a risk in your life in order to see if it works. And sometimes it doesn't, like sometimes you have to just, so many times I've woken up in the morning, I'm like, okay, what am I doing today? And you're like, okay, you get through the day, and then the next day, sometimes you're like, oh, maybe I should have done that something different. And so you try again, like you just have to, you have this opportunity in life to get up every single day.
Right. Yeah.
So why not just give it a shot?
Mm-hmm.
Do the best you can.
Yeah.
And make sure that you are trying and you're doing something good.
Yeah. And to get up in the morning and to be able to think about what you're going to do or to be excited about what you're going to do. I mean, I know the days when I wake and I'm just, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's bring it on. Let's do the things that we've been talking about doing, that I planned the night before or the weeks before, the months before. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. And it's scary.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do fail. Mm-hmm. And you're like, and that just kind of sets a tone for the entire day, right? Like, you're like, oh, but you just need to be able to wake up the next morning and, try again. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same thing for somebody that's graduating. It's really hard. And, we live in really interesting times where things are not sometimes stable. And all you can do is get up and try. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got family that has helped support you. I'm assuming that's centered to, what keeps you going. Yeah. What other things do you rely on?
I think that asking questions and looking for those answers, I think that that's really the other thing I rely on. Sometimes you don't know where to go, and sometimes family doesn't have the right answer for you. That doesn't mean it's the wrong answer. It just means that sometimes you want to hear other people's thoughts, and I think that you can rely on other people. You have to be able to kind of go outside of your main sources in order to get some other thoughts, and just know that there's other people out there that maybe you don't know yet, but they're out there somewhere, right?
Somebody's done what you're trying to do, or something similar.
Yeah. So asking questions, I think, is huge.
Yeah, remaining in curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, figuring things out. Yep. So what do you see for projects upcoming for you?
A little bit of everything, I guess. Yeah. It's been fun. It's been really fun. Just seeing how people find out about you. It's been really interesting, word of mouth or just the computer. Like, it's amazing what the computer has done, right? Technology. Uh-huh. It's wild. And I think that the people that you make connections with too in life have been super helpful. I have little projects here and there, a couple of middle-sized projects, but I think that I'm doing everything that I love right now. I like making that initial connection.
Hmm.
I love meeting with them. I love talking about the little things that they want to do sometimes or the big dreams that they have. Like sometimes a lot of these projects are just a stepping stone for them too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that where I see myself going is knowing that I have a pulse on everything and knowing that whatever I do is hopefully going to make somebody happy where they are.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because typically, if somebody stays in their house more than the 7 to 10 years, if they only spend 7 to 10 years there, they're going to enjoy what you've helped them with.
Yeah.
Or beyond that, they'll have a lifetime there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
It is a great way to provide people with a place to really feel good about.
Yeah.
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 And a place that they know they can always come home to and, and it's theirs,
Mhm.
right? They can live there and they can be happy there and just feel at peace.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So is there any particular part of the architectural design process that you really love?
Yeah. Which one? I think it's the initial schematic phase. It's like when you try to transfer all these thoughts and these ideas onto paper. Because sometimes you don't know where it's going to go. And sometimes you have to try 10 different options. Sometimes you have to try 20 different options before you even show something to the client. And sometimes that's still not the right one.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've tried 20 different things at home and you've sketched and you've used trace paper and you've just done so many options and it still doesn't work. And so you go to the client and you show them one and you're like, okay, how's this? And sometimes they're like, okay, well, let's change this a little bit. Let's change this a little bit. And then it morphs again. And sometimes it morphs completely into something else. And then you present that again and you say, how's this? Like, are we getting on the right track here? And they're like, yeah. And then you don't talk for maybe a week. And then all of a sudden they're like, hold on, we have another idea. And then you have to go back to the drawing board. And I really enjoy that. I think that that's a lot of fun. And I think that that's how you build that relationship and that trust with your client. And you realize that there's so many different things that you can do.
What does mastery or the pursuit of mastery as an architect mean to you?
Mastery of the pursuit. Whew.
We might call that a loaded question, huh?
Mastery. I don't know if you can ever master something fully.
Well, that's true. That's the beauty of it, too.
Yeah. I don't think that you can. I think that there's always that opportunity for growth, right? I think that that's part of the fun of it. And I think that, again, the people that you work with they're all kind of masters in one way or another of what they do. And it goes back to that whole teamwork idea.
Yeah, and if you surround yourself with people who are seeking mastery, then you can all achieve the level of mastery that you can together.
Yeah. But I don't think that there is just one master for anything. It's kind of just like everybody kind of has their hands in it, and everybody brings a skill that creates something beautiful in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And what misconceptions do most people have about working with an architect?
That's a very good question.
Well, thank Benjamin for that question. and the other one too.
I think a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot of people. I think some people feel they don't need an architect. Why do I need an architect? I can do this on my own. But I think it goes back to that idea of trying so many ideas and taking the time to actually think through them and listening to them and being able to think in a different way, right? I think the other thing is that I think a lot of builders sometimes, take on that role. And that's okay. I mean, I think that's all right.
The napkin design at the cafe table. Yeah. I want to build a house. Here, you could do this, right? Yeah. And that can work.
That can work. It can definitely work. But I think that having an architect on your project is really important because they do listen and they take into account all the tiny little things that make something super special. And it's a trust and a relationship that you build with that person. And at the end of, I've always thought this is at the end of the project, I want to be able to sit across the table from that client and be able to have a conversation and keep that trust and that relationship going.
Yeah.
So you're kind of creating, you get a friend out of the deal.
Yeah. A raving fan.
Yeah.
A friend for life.
Yeah. A friend for life.
Yeah.
That's willing to listen. But also like not be judgmental of what you want to do. Sometimes you go to a friend and you're like, hey, what do you think of this? And they're like, oh, no, an architect listens and it's their job to be able to take all your thoughts and make sense of them sometimes, and show you hopefully what it is that you want to do. Right. They're not taking your ideas and changing them and saying, no, I think you should do this. They're taking your ideas and putting it on paper to make sure that that's really what you want to do. And if it is, then you proceed. But if it's not, you go back to the drawing board and you start over again. And I think that that's the beauty of having an architect on a project is that they are there to test all your theories that you have floating around in your head and making sure that they are the right one. Yeah. When
did you discover the artistic interest in your life?
Interesting. Yeah. It was definitely high school. And I think it was actually another teacher. I was in an art class and I just started sketching. And that teacher actually put me in connection with my drafting teacher.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they, I guess, they must have talked at some point, and she saw that I was just doing a black and white rendering. And she was actually the one that introduced me to my drafting teacher. So again, it's, another dot, right?
Another dot, yes.
And I just really enjoyed it. I love the peacefulness of it, of the quiet. You could do it anywhere. You can just go and draw. And I didn't think anything of it at that moment. I just thought, our class, I'm having fun. I get to just not have to do math or science or something else that requires a lot of brain work. But you are using your brain a lot in art, and you have to think about the juxtaposition of forms and shapes and colors and everything else. But yeah, I think it was definitely high school again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you sketch now?
I do.
Yeah.
I sketch a lot. Yeah.
So you probably sketch some in your architectural process.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of sketching, a lot of just, you take a plan, or just a site plan really. And then you have to figure out sun, you have to figure out drainage, you have to figure out water views, all of that. And that's really where it starts, right? That's the very first sketch, and trying to figure out what the relationships are on the ground. And then you slowly start to dive in deeper and deeper and make that bigger and bigger, until you get into every single little space, every little nook and cranny. And yeah, it's a lot of sketching. And even once you have that idea, again, you put a piece of trace on it and you try another sketch. And so sketching goes on through the entire process, even during the building process. You're working with a contractor and we're trying to work something out, and maybe there was a detail, right? And like you team up and you come up with an idea, and you're like, okay, well, let's test this out. Let's see if this actually works. And you draw it and you're like, nope, it doesn't work. We can do that better. And so you test something else, you do another sketch, and then sooner or later that teamwork comes up with one idea that actually does work. So yeah, it's just trying to make things better and the best that you can.
Do you ever find yourself sketching non-architecturally?
Oh yeah, with the kids all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Doodles of little dogs and cats and fish and sharks. Yeah. We have one little book actually that we used to always take to church with us, like when Oliver was little.
Yes.
And it's just a little black bound book and probably yay thick, just to entertain him because they're wild sometimes in church.
They were good in church.
So we used to sketch sometimes, and so sometimes we'll find that little sketchbook, and like it'll have a car, like a bull, or like a anything that he asked us to maybe sketch, and it would keep him entertained, and he would watch us. And so we were listening and watching him watch us, and just kind of making sure that, so we still have that little book.
Great.
And once in a while we'll pull it out and we're like, oh yeah, look. Or sometimes it's just his hand, and like we draw detail and stuff like that. But yeah, we always find ourselves sketching a lot. Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
Anything that we didn't cover that comes to mind that you'd like to say?
I don't think so. I think you did a good job asking a lot of really good questions.
Well, so how do people learn more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah. So I have a website, rdoakarchitect.com. And people are always welcome to go on there. And, I don't have a lot of projects on there yet, but I'm hoping to grow that. And I love talking to people. So even if somebody, doesn't know if they want to have an architect on their project, just call me. Let's talk about it and we can figure it out. And sometimes I'll just meet them at their house and, have a quick consult and we can come up with some ideas, like even on the spot. And then from there, people figure out if that's the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it could be anything from somebody who's going to build a brand new home.
Correct.
From a barren piece of land.
To a mudroom.
Yeah. That's added onto their existing house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or a renovation of a house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's beautiful to be on your site and to see what's happened at 1037 Washington Street because that has been incredible transformation in itself.
It's been fun. That's also been, and I think that goes to, what we're saying about architecture is like when we walk in our house sometimes we'll go on vacation and we come back home and we open the door and we're like, like we like being here. Like and I think that says a lot about architecture and that feeling that when you get home and you open that front door and you feel at peace and you feel like you belong, that's, I think that, you want every project to be exactly that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Ara, thank you very much. Can't thank you enough for being here and wish you the very best of luck and just can't wait to see the Doak family around town.
Awesome.
Because it's always a pleasant thing to do.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah.